So Claire, welcome to the Everymind podcast. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Doing well, doing well. Yeah, we were just talking off record about the magnets behind you and your love of traveling, and it's got me a bit actually. I want to go traveling again, and I'm sure you're the same. And this isn't the greatest period to think of that either.
We were driving the other day and I drove past Heathrow and I just thought, God, I want to be stuck waiting in a queue in Heathrow. And I
Yeah,
never thought I would
yeah.
want to do
I
that.
want my plane to be delayed, and I'm just in the
Yeah.
airport. So yeah, no, but I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But Claire, let's just start by, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what do you do?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Clare Kenny. I live in Surrey with my husband, my 8-month-old daughter, 3 dogs and 2 cats. So it's quite hectic in this house. I'm really passionate about mental and physical well-being. And it's one of the main reasons that I started the business that I'm in today, because I was listening to a podcast about a week ago where the guy was talking about work-life balance and how he really hates that term because work is your life, is part of your life, and to be like enduring work just to get to your life seems like such a shame. So I started my business with the idea of thinking about how can we bring well-being into the workplace and normalizing mental health conversations and making sure that time where you're, such a majority of your waking hours you're at work can be a fulfilling experience for people. In terms of my experience, so I've worked for about 15 years in people management roles through different consultancies and training organisations, kind of slightly different industries. So I've worked in sort of psychology training, leadership development, and also digital marketing. But I've always headed up teams, and that's always been the thing I've been most passionate about, is how do you help lead teams through change? How do you support them through difficult times? And how do you make sure that they're engaged with you as an organisation and the strategies that you have?
Nice.
In terms of personal stuff, I like to exercise and I like to eat to have a nice balance. I really like animals and nature. As we said, I like to travel. And I really like listening to podcasts and audiobooks much more than watching the TV or reading.
Awesome, nice. And was it like doing the work that you do, was there sort of a personal reason, or was it like a passion for you to want to do what you do? Because I'm sure like trying to support employees with their well-being is a sort of, it's something that normally comes from something that you're driven to do, or you've got that purpose to do that.
Yeah. So I've got quite a lot of personal experience of not putting my well-being above my career. So I used to work in a very rewarding but very demanding role, and I developed very quickly in that role. And then I went out and I spent 2 years living in Asia, setting up our Asia business out there. And I look back on my time in Asia and I did some incredible travel, and it was an amazing experience. But I can look at it from a distance and say I was really mentally unhealthy when I was there. I was working constantly. I'd work later than my UK employee and my UK colleagues. So I'd be doing like 8 or 9 hours of overtime every night. I was in a global role, so at the crack of dawn, New Zealand would be getting up, and then Australia, and then we'd have Asia, and then all of my colleagues are in the UK, so I'd be on calls with them during the UK, and then America. So I never switched off. I'd be checking my phone in the middle of the night, and I felt that my happiness was really based on whether things went right or wrong in my job, even though I couldn't control that. So it'd be like, this weekend will be fine. I'll have a nice time this weekend and I'll be relaxed if this goes okay. So I had no ability to set any boundaries. I was to be able to just say, right, I'm going to switch off, or, I don't need to do as much, was, really put that pressure on me. And that was one of the lead things that kind of led me to then have anxiety. And that's something that I have struggled with for about the past decade, and I can very much see that it was the way in which I approached that role that led to that. So it is a real personal thing for me, especially when I then moved into another role about 5 years ago where I didn't feel that at all. and I felt I was given the toolkit to set my own boundaries. I felt I was given the support to talk about my mental health and to be able to do just as hard a job with just as many demands and it feel completely different. So that for me, just it felt so important that there's different ways in which you can approach your role and approach your demands, and kind of the way that you frame it and the way that you approach it means that you can get a completely different outcome. So having had that firsthand experience and then seeing how it can be different really led me to want to show other people that. And I've done a lot of counselling. You know, I've worked on my anxiety. I've lost both of my parents, and so I've done a lot of counselling. So I've had like 5 years of very intense training and upskilling when it comes to how to manage your own mental health. But lots of people don't have that. So how can we support people in the workplace to be able to do that?
Amazing, and thank you for sharing. And it's, that's kind of what I see is, I do this because of personal reasons and personal experience. And I lost my dad to suicide, which I'm very vocal about. And I was the same as you. I had to learn how to adapt and manage my mental health because I was just getting deeper and deeper into this dark hole. And I think it's a shame that that's the case. Like, people who are very passionate about helping people with mental health typically have had to have gone through it before because we're not educated on this sort of early on, which of course is something that we're looking to change, and by the sounds of it you are as well. But you mentioned something about sort of working long hours, and I've literally just come off a webinar because one of the key insights and data that we're seeing from the employees using the Everymind app is struggling to switch off and problems with sleep. So talking about sort of, I hate talking about it, but talking about sort of COVID-19, lockdown, working from home, have you seen that being an issue as well with the sort of line of work that you're doing, sort of employees struggling to switch off?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there's a few ways in which people are experiencing it. So one is and this is, with the digital becoming so much more mainstream for everybody, is that you're always on. You can always be got from some different platform. And a coachee that I've worked with said she'll, there's an email and then someone's Skyping her and then she's getting a video call and then she's missing something that came through MS Teams, and she's just got so many different platforms and she's not really sure which one she should be focusing on. And when she tries to shut down, there's always one that she's forgotten, and kind of people still are getting through. And also, if you're not used to working from home and you don't have that experience, it's really hard to know what the boundaries are. And if you're not lucky enough to have a separate room that you can shut at the end of the night, how do you go, right, well, I'm moving from my dining table to my couch and that's my commute, and now I'm at home and I'm not going to work on my laptop and I'm going to shut it away and have those boundaries. I think it can be really, really difficult. And some people are working at a table with all of their housemates as well. And I think that it just becomes even more challenging and even more important to have your own self-management skills, because you don't have a caring boss going, it's time to go home, you can go home now. And I also think that a lot of people, they wouldn't think twice about leaving at 4 p.m. on a Friday. They've done their hours, they've been to the office, and they're going to go to the pub with their friends. Whereas now people feel if they leave at 4 on a Friday, what if someone tries to message them and they're not there? Will people think they've been slacking all day? I think that in some ways it's tipped to people feeling like they have to be present all the time and they have to be on every conference call and every video call. Otherwise people might assume that they're taking a nap, when usually people work longer hours when they're working from home than they do in the office anyway.
Yeah, 100%. And I think we was discussing this today as well, like how I'm sure it's the same with a lot of people. We're almost having more meetings now than we were in the office, because I can just jump on a Zoom with you and then we can come off, jump on a Zoom with someone else or whatever. And even webinars and workshops, like same with you, I'm sure you deliver a lot of your stuff in person, right? But now it's become virtual. I can deliver 4 webinars in a day, 5 webinars in a day,
Yeah.
and you have no switch off period. And I think it is that sort of setting boundaries. You mentioned about one of sort of when your own experience, sort of seeing a good way of doing it, like an employee giving you the toolkit, etc. So can you sort of share in terms of the differences? Is setting boundaries something that's just down to the individual, or as an employer, can we do something to encourage employees to set boundaries too?
I think it's really important that you do, as an employer, encourage people. I've seen an example recently that I found really frustrating, is that the employer is consistently saying, you must take time for yourself, you must prioritize your well-being, but they do nothing else to back that up. So they're putting all of the responsibility on the individuals, and they've got about 60% of their staff furloughed. The rest of the staff are picking up everything else. They're incredibly stressed, they're incredibly overworked. And then they're also being told, and you must manage your own well-being. And actually it's just more frustrating than it is supportive to keep getting those messages. It's, oh, you must take a lunch break, but you've just booked a meeting in for my lunch hour, so you're not actually doing anything to back that up. And how am I supposed to do that myself? Because we're never very good. We're our own worst enemy when it comes to our own well-being. We're much better at saying to our other half or our friend, oh, don't be so critical of yourself, please, take some time. So I think as an organization, you have to follow it up with real tangible action. Say, you need to be taking care of your well-being. That means that we're going to do a policy that means that nobody has calls between 1 and 2. So everyone can go and take a walk. Make sure you get outside, go have your lunch outside, do something that just feels it's away from your desk. And also policies like saying, I, as a leader, will never send emails at the weekend, and I have no expectation of you sending emails at the weekend. And even if you want to work on the weekend, but you set them all to go on Monday morning, that just really makes a difference of the kind of culture and the expectations you're showing your employees what you think they should be doing.
Yeah, I love that, because again, there's a real sort of communication element where it's like, you've got to look after your mental health is important, you've got to do this, but it's actually providing them with the like you said earlier, the toolkit or the suggestions or the strategies to be able to do something with it as well. It's all right saying you must do it, but you need to give them something extra than that as well.
And if we all knew how to do it, we'd all be fine, right? There would be no therapists, there would be no organizations like us. People don't know how to prioritize their mental health and how to focus on their well-being, and you need someone else to show you how to do that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the same as you, I'm guessing, as well. I'm very vocal when I'm sharing my proactive mental health strategies and why it's important, and self-care is a priority, self-care is not a luxury, and all of that. And then I'm very honest and say, but I still have to force myself, because naturally I will my to-do list will be ringing in my head. I'll be like, there's no point going for that walk, you've got to do this, there's no point going for that run or whatever. I think it is just that constant reminder, isn't it? There's never just I'm going to look after my mental health, everything's going to be fine. It is constantly reminding yourself to do so.
Yeah, I've got a best friend, and we're very much each other's reminder. So she'll say, oh, I've been really stressed today, and I'll say the things to her that she can't say to herself, and she'll say the things to me that I can't say to myself. And that's something you can do at work as well, where you've got a mental health buddy that reminds you. Last week you did say you were going to leave and go to the gym, and you haven't. So what's going on there?
Yeah, I like that a lot. But in terms of sort of your experience, have you seen employers focusing more on employee well-being during this sort of difficult period?
I think it varies. I think there's definitely a lot more people talking about it. Whether they're following it up with tangible action definitely varies. There are organizations where I've seen some great examples, and then others where it is focus on your mental health but not really knowing what to do about it. And I do understand why organizations, they're under so much pressure, they don't really know how to start with employee well-being. It's only really been something in the past few years that we've talked more about. So for a lot of people it feels like a fluffy nice to have, and we're in the middle of a global pandemic, and why would we be doing fluffy nice to haves, whereas actually it's just fundamentally the building blocks of making sure that all of your employees can work sustainably and won't burn out and are able to like be productive, and you aren't losing people to sickness, and attrition and stuff like that. And in terms of good examples, I think that it's really important to check in with your staff. So I know of an organisation that would usually probably do twice a year, would do like a pulse survey or a PCON survey, and now they're doing them every 2 months, I think, to really just regularly check in, because things change so much. And in 2020 there's so many changes all the time, so to be regularly checking in on how people feel and in terms of their well-being and their workload and their sort of engagement to the organisation. My biggest piece of advice with something like that is don't not follow up. The worst thing is to send out all these surveys and then not tell people why, what the actions are. People then feel like they're shouting into a black hole and there's no actions coming out of it. So that's, I think that's really important. One example I've seen a few times that I really like and I think can be extremely powerful is having senior management, members of the senior management sharing their mental health stories. So standing up there, either on a video call or newsletter or however they want to do it in terms of format, and saying, I've got anxiety, I've suffered with depression, I'm an alcoholic, I've been sober 10 years, this is how it's impacted my career, because it really shows authentic leadership. And it creates a safe space for people to feel I can talk about that stuff as well. There's an open forum for us to talk about this, and it creates an emotional rapport as well, so people feel more engaged in the organisation. And I know that if I in my last organisation, I had a consultant who did do that with me, and suddenly I felt so much more. I almost was like, oh no, let me tell you everything that, that's been holding me back, that's actually been making me be half a person. I'm turning up to work as this polished version of myself, when actually that's not real at all. And us being able to have that open conversation really makes a massive difference. So I think that's a really powerful thing that can be done that costs no money. So yeah,
exactly. And I think that's what I was going to say, the two things that you've really just mentioned there, regular check-ins and encouraging employees and senior managers to share their story costs nothing, right? It's literally just empowering employees to share their story and empowering them to sort of check in as well. I really liked as well what you've said in terms of survey. In a way, it's letting them know we hear you, these are the actions that we're taking, we're trying to make these steps forward to change. Just quickly on the kind of check-in piece, is there kind of like advice that you'd recommend to do it? Because I've had this question a lot recently, and it's so true that if we're in an office right now, me and you, you might be sitting next to me, I could read, Claire, how's the holidays, or, how's the little one, or whatever. And we'd have that casual conversation. And then I'd walk over to the room and I'd speak to maybe someone else. And you've constantly got more check-ins in an office, where I probably wouldn't text you and say, Claire, do you want a quick 5-minute talk about how you're feeling? Or, and then I'll message Joe, I would normally walk past you going on to the way to the kitchen. I'm just going to check in, and are you okay? So what advice would you give to kind of have more regular check-ins as we're working remote?
Yeah, I've actually just written an article about this, about how to build a more successful remote working culture. And it's never going to be possible to completely recreate that spontaneous conversation and the ideas you get, and also the way in which you learn. So you might spot someone else and go, oh, I see that you're doing a presentation, I did something similar last year, let me share this stuff with you, that you just don't get if everyone's working remotely. But I think that one of the best ways to do that is to pick a platform. So people use Slack, MS Teams, like Workplace, Facebook Workplace and stuff like that. And not just have that be business communications, you're having options. My husband's organisation, they have pup dates, and I can't remember what the cat pun one is, but it's, you know, people share pictures of their dogs and people are able to comment, and it means you talk across different teams. It's an opportunity to just do something that feels a bit more playful.
Yeah.
And then you can have, you know, hours where it's like, well, everyone can log into this onto this platform, onto this into this room, and we can all have a virtual coffee and we can have a chat, or we can drop people an email. Or if you want to spark ideas, instead of saying, right, I'm going to set up yet another video call, you could say, I've shared a Google document and I put the ideas in. I'd love people for us to throw some ideas around, so it doesn't even have to be in real time. You can put something down, someone else can come later, and then if you need to follow up with a call in a couple of weeks, great, but you've already got so far down the road in terms of throwing around those ideas. So I think there are ways in which you can do stuff digitally. It'll never be quite the same, but if you encourage using the platform in ways in which encourage that, then you can get some of it back.
Yeah, I like that. And I think if we look at the advantages as well, you know, if we're in an office environment, you know, it's quite a silent culture, and I'm struggling, you know, am I going to turn around to you and say, like, Claire, you know, I'm really struggling because I'm in this office environment, everyone's around me. Whereas working from home, you know, I know that you're quite open about your anxiety. I could easily open up Slack, drop you a private message and just say, Claire, I didn't really want to send you this, but, you know, I'm not in a good place at the moment. Then it's like you doing the check-in of, why don't we jump on a Zoom and have a coffee or something like that. So I think, you know, I do a lot of work for men's mental health, and I always sort of say the best way to try and get men to talk isn't sort of face-to-face eye contact. That's very sort of daunting for them. Sometimes it is like a, you know, a WhatsApp message, and then it's then meeting them in person and you know, having that conversation. So I think it's looking at those positives as well. Is there anything else that you've seen organizations do to gain some good results for mental health in the workplace?
So something I mentioned before, which is about upskilling people with their own toolkits, I think is really important, and that can be done through coaching, through training, online stuff, like things like your app. So people being able to look at stuff and find their own tools to help, I think is really important, and people feel invested in that. Fundamentally, like, wellbeing initiatives are great and important, but the main contributors to people's well-being is that they're not overworked and that they're paid well, and that they don't feel that the stress of that. So it's not always about going, okay, well, let's do yoga on Tuesdays. It's about fundamentally looking at your culture and thinking about how, you know, are people getting the right work-life balance? Are they getting paid fairly for the role they do? And then also thinking about culturally, how confident do people feel? Can they call their boss and say, I'm feeling depressed and I'm going to go to my doctor? I know personally that for a long time I would call in with I'd make up a physical illness to cover up for a mental illness when going to work. So how do you empower people to be able to call up their boss and say that kind of stuff? And how do you role model that as leaders, to be open about some of your struggles? Because mental health is not something that happens to a few people. We all have our mental health, and sometimes we're better and sometimes we're worse, and that's, you know, something that happens to everyone throughout their lives. I think also one of the biggest contributors, having spoken to people, I like to interview individuals about their specific experiences, you know, what's worked for them in an organization and what they'd like to see more of. And one of the biggest contributors to people's well-being at work is their direct line manager. So you could make everything seem wonderfully supportive in the culture, and you could have different toolkits and different training available. But if your line manager isn't someone that you feel you can talk to about, the demands you have, or, mental struggles that you're having, then nothing's really going to work. So I always think about, how do we focus on the line manager population? How are they able to really see what an effective employee wellbeing culture looks like? How can they talk with their direct reports about mental health in an open, non-judgmental way? How are they able to support people? How can you give them the ownership and the empowerment to be able to say, yes, you can do flexible working, and I don't need to get that signed off by HR. I'm empowered to a certain level to be able to give you flexible working because I feel it will help you with your well-being. Yeah. And I think that's really important, that direct relationship is a positive one for people, because I think it can often, a lot of people will cite relationship with their line manager as a reason why they've left a role. So I think that being able to upskill people there is really important.
Yeah, I like that as well, because again, and it comes back to that whole, like you said, if we can encourage senior managers, line managers to be open and honest about mental health, the fact that we all have it and they're struggling as well, everyone has it on a different level, but there's still this perception that if I'm vulnerable, you're going to judge my performance, or if I'm vulnerable, I'm not a very good leader, right? So it's that encouraging those line managers to just be honest, and then that changes that dynamic in that sort of team, and that can have a massive impact on culture. I also like what you said as well about earlier, you alluded to it about intent, companies doing yoga on a Tuesday, this, but there's zero strategy behind it. Like, there's zero intent of, if we do this, what's this going to achieve? How are we going to, help our employees? And, I talk about this a lot as well, but do you sometimes think that mental health is still treated as a tick box exercise for some organizations?
Yes, I think that, like I said with the yoga, it's that, and I can understand why people, when they're under such pressure financially, it's been a crazy year for people to go, I just want to tick that box and feel that we've done it. But actually, supporting employee wellbeing is something that has to be fully baked into a culture, and you don't create culture through ticking a box. You have to look at the way everybody behaves. You have to look at the type of people you're hiring. You have to look at the way in which you're building your strategy. What are the things that are helping you build your goals for an organization, and is employee wellbeing one of them? Because if it's only about the financial gain and you're not thinking about employee wellbeing when you're building your strategy, you can't add it on and expect to be really, really effective when it comes to that. And then how do you approach, I think that 2020 will be such a year where it's helped us think more outside of the box about how we can approach stuff. But, how do you approach people's different needs when it comes to flexible working, working from home, or working from the office, that some people do have realised that they need now? I think that a lot of people want to just tick that box. It feels like employee wellbeing is a box tick, and we've got fruit in the kitchen, and you've got reduced gym membership and yoga.
They've got an EAP as well, don't forget. They've got an EAP.
But actually, that's great that I've got my discount for the gym, but if I don't feel like I can push back on a piece of work because I need to protect my well-being, if I don't feel confident to say that my health is more important than anything, then I don't feel like that you're getting it right as an organisation.
Yeah, I agree.
And that does, and you can still be very financially driven and care about this stuff, because when people have better well-being, the money that you gain from productivity, from reducing attrition, from less sick days, from the engagement you get from employees, it's been measured time and time again, that the financial gains of this. So it doesn't have to be one or the other.
Yeah, and I think what what I'm challenged by at the moment, and I'm sure it's the same with you, is if you take an organization of 200 employees and as an example, right? And let's say that company really wants to push the mental health agenda, but they want to do it because they know the return on investment now. They know that
Mm-hmm.
potentially it could be, good for the business in terms of monetary value. Then they task one individual who's the
Mm-hmm.
HR director who deals with everything else anyway with doing that. So now
Yeah.
you're like, and as you say, mental health is so hard anyway. We don't even know
Yeah.
how to manage our own mental health. But now you're saying to just one person who does a full-time job anyway, you've got to go and improve the mental health of 200 people. And
Yeah.
it's like that they still want the results. They want the return on investment. They want to prove that this is working, but they're not actually putting any strategy behind it. They're
Mm-hmm.
not, investing time in the experts doing it. It's just, oh, this one individual can dramatically change culture. And as you know, and I know, it's far more complex than that.
Yeah. And you can often find with any project or any change management that if HR is saying one thing but your CEO is saying or behaving in a different way, it's really hard to implement anything effectively. So HR might be saying, right, we should all take lunch breaks, we should all be prioritizing our own well-being. But if the CEO is working constant hours and is sending emails at all times, then what message are you really going to listen to?
Yeah, 100%. And you said something when we first started about work-life balance, which I want to ask, and then we'll go into the quick fire round. I'll ask you the 3 quick questions. Work-life balance is very interesting to me. So can you just explain what work-life balance means to you?
So I have done a lot of roles that I think have led me to doing this. And as I said, I just came back from maternity leave and I started on Monday, and I sat down and I felt really excited because I was doing something that I'd done so much over maternity leave because it was something that just naturally was so interesting and I was so passionate about, listening to podcasts and writing articles, discussing it with different people, doing research. So I sat down and I just felt really excited. So to me, I could really picture that work was life and life was work, and that was fine. It didn't feel like, oh, well, I'll get through the day and then I'll be able to relax again. Not that you can relax when you have a baby, really. It's in a way it sort of flips the other way.
You relax when you're at work when you've got a baby.
Yeah. So that for me felt really important, but I also understand that not everybody is going to find something that they're like, I'm really excited. And it was also just Monday. Ask me again in 3 months, and I'm like, oh God, Monday again. But I think it's about being able to enjoy your work so that it's not something that you have to endure to get to the point where you can relax. I heard something that was talking about how lots of people just wait for retirement. That's a real risk of your life, and then you get to retirement and then suddenly something happens and you can't do all that traveling that you wanted to do. You can't, write that book that you wanted to. I think that your life is now, it's happening all the time. So how do you make sure every day has a bit of everything that makes you happy? And I once was asked a question about 4 years ago where I'd always thought of success as being the next step in my career, pushing for my career, earning lots of money and being thought of as really successful. And, look on my LinkedIn, aren't I successful? And someone said to me, surely success is just being happy, right? And I felt like so stupid. I hadn't ever equated success as just being happy. And happiness looks different to different people. And for some people, it might be being the CEO of that company. For some other people, it might be having a job that they can not worry about and go home and not have to think about it. And other people, it might be about doing their passion projects, being creative, being able to really live their dream. So for me, it's being able to just live your life, be happy in whatever way that means to you, and making sure that the balance is right. And especially once you have children, as you said, you have children, you do learn when you're just working for the sake of working, and you go, I could be so much more productive just sat playing with my child versus this. And I think it helps you cut those ties and walk away from your work as well.
There's so much there that I want to like. The ideas were popping around my head, and now I've forgotten half of them. I agree with you so much. You know, the biggest lesson that I learned, obviously, with my dad, very sadly, is my dad was a very hard-working engineer. He had a part-time physiotherapy business. He was very academic. He went and got a psychology degree. You know, and my dad's, you know, suicide was a massive shock to us because we really didn't know. You know, that he was struggling. It was a 6-month period leading up to it, but before that there was no signs. And my dad's aim in life was to retire at 50, and he took his own life at 45. And that was, for me, like, that's why I left that job within a couple of months and I started a business, because I was, you know, I use that as a bit of a driver of, as you've said, I don't want to wait for life. Like, I'd rather go and, you know, enjoy life. And then what you said as well about, you know, success and the vision of success, you know, it was only a couple of months ago where, you know, I woke up one day, and throughout the day, this very rarely happens, but I had this almost clarity and peace of mind where I wasn't really worrying about much, and my mind was quite quiet. And I was like, wow, like, this is success, you know. And I grew up wanting money, a bigger house, a nice job, like a successful business, all of this. But I never sat there at 10, 11 years old and say, I just want peace of mind. Like, I just want a clear mind with, like, you know, and
it's the dream, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Mind is a real dream.
Exactly. And it's the clear mind was almost like, you know, there were still worries popping in, but I was actually like, I'm pretty content. Like, you know, I don't feel like I need that bigger house, that, you know, nicer car on the drive, whatever. And I think that's a conversation we need to have around success, especially in the workplace too, isn't it? You know, we do feel like employees are motivated by money, but, you know, a lot of them aren't really. They're motivated by that kind of enjoyment of their work and how that carries through to life as well.
Funnily enough, the job that I had that I went was in Asia for, the reason I got the strength to leave that job was when my mum died. Just realized life was too short to live that kind of life. And
it seems always that way, doesn't it? It's that kind of wake up call.
You really need something like kind of quite significant to happen to kind
shake
of
you out of it. Like, what are you doing? Yeah, so true. And I think as well, like, when you look at work-life balance, as you were saying, work-life balance to me feels like they have to be balanced. So like 50-50. So I should be working 50% of the time. I should be enjoying life 50% of the time. And as you said, like you, I love my work. So working on a weekends doesn't feel like a chore to me. It's like I do enjoy that. And I always feel like work-life balance is almost like a seesaw. So the way that I kind of see it is like, sometimes I'm working a lot and my family are impacted. You know, I'm not being as, you know, such a hands-on dad, everything. But I don't beat myself up on that. All I know is I've now got to go the other way, like less work, like full in as a dad, full in as like a husband and all of that. Because getting that balance, I think, is impossible, right? You're never going to get that 50-50 balance in a way.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So 3 quick questions, and we could talk for ages, right? Because I'm sure there's more that I could ask you. First question: best purchase you've made under £100 recently?
So recently I have been buying tickets to go to wildlife drawing classes.
Okay, nice.
So this is this wonderful woman called Jenny Webber, who does, it's like life drawing classes, but instead of a nude model, you do different rescue animals. So I've done miniature piglets, wolves, greyhounds, and I last weekend did a skunk, drew a skunk, and I really enjoyed that because I was really creative and artistic as a child, and I sort of just lost that, and it came back in lockdown where I was like, what can I do to you know, just have a hobby, really. So that's something that I started doing more of in lockdown, and then as lockdown eased and the classes came open again, I've been doing that, and it's my real kind of treat away from childcare to just go out and do something creative. And I love animals, so it's really nice to see new stuff I've never seen before.
Yeah, it must be quite like a mindful activity as well.
It feels really mindful. Yeah, it definitely does.
Nice, cool. And what advice would you give to the your younger self?
So it's something that we just talked about actually, is that success is happiness and contentment. It's not numbers in a bank account, or levels in a career. There are lots of things that contribute to your happiness, but the happiness is your success, and that looks different for different people. And so what you might think is success might be different for someone else, and that's absolutely fine.
Yeah, I love that. And then finally, if there's one thing a HR professional can do listening to this to better support their staff, what would it be? And I know that's quite a big question actually, but if there's one thing a HR professional could do, what would it be?
I think I'd start with your line management population. Get them to understand, change some of the maybe more old-fashioned attitudes, help them with some tools, because then they can cascade down. You can actually start with a smaller group of people to upskill, and then they're able to have those conversations, and I think that can make a real positive ripple effect quite quickly.
Yeah, on that as well, have you seen that the line managers that aren't very open to mental health, is there a way of getting through to them in your opinion?
I think you have to change people's mindsets of what mental health is. And I think that we all have our mental health, and sometimes we've got a cold and sometimes we have a broken leg, and that's the same with your mental health. And trying not to just think of it as, oh, it's these disorders or things that I've never had. So people just kind of being able to reframe it from a different perspective and understand that it doesn't have to be so scary or something that they've never experienced.
Yeah, I love that. It's education, isn't it? Because
yeah,
I never blame anyone for being dismissive of mental health, because it's purely a lack of education. It's purely, the conditioning that they've grew up in. And I think, as you've said, there's still a really blurred line between mental health and mental illness. Whenever we're talking about mental health, we naturally default into mental illness. Depression, anxiety, as you said. So it's that framing it of mental health is something you have, we all have, and we should be able to manage it and talk about it as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Claire, where can people find out a little bit about you as well?
So you can go to my website, which is www.clarekenny.com. And that's got all the information in terms of what I do and how I can support different organisations. I also do one-to-one coaching as well, so you can find out more about me there, or you can look me up on LinkedIn as well.
Cool. Thank you so much for coming on to the
No
Everymind
problem.
podcast.
It was fun.
Really appreciate your advice.
Thank you. Cheers.